It is our first Techie Talk of November 2022. Techie Chan, our state representative from the 2nd Norfolk District, is joining us again. Hi, Techie.
Hey, Joe. Good to see you and a happy month of November.
Hard to believe. Yes, how was your Halloween?
Peaceful. It's we As we all know, the neighborhoods keep changing around us, and we're in that little cycle where we have less kids immediately around us, the trick-or-treating age. It's just how it works in life. So, I suspect in a few years I have more trick-or-treating age kids around me, but right now that's not the case. So it's been a fairly quiet, I think, a very quiet Halloween right now.
So a lot of leftover candy in the Chan household, I'm guessing.
Yeah, unfortunately, we do not. We have surplus problems.
By the way, before I forget, we're recording this on November 2nd, and I want to congratulate you on your, I believe, 12th anniversary of being elected to the House.
Oh, thank you very much. It's actually six. It's like six, 2 terms piece, but yeah. I really appreciate it. It's been a fun dozen years. It's hard to believe how quickly it's gone by, to be frank with you. It's like you blink and suddenly it's a dozen years in, and the world keeps changing around us in government and life. And it's been fun. And I'm, looking forward to have another 2 years and serve folks in Quincy, in particular my district, and, working in the House of Representatives with my colleagues. And it's a good job. I tell folks that it's the job is what you make of it. If you're willing to, do the work and let the job be what it is, it can be a lot of fun until you're ready for your next stage in life. So for better or for worse, I'm not ready for my next stage of life yet, and hopefully we'll be back after next Tuesday for another 2-year term. So I'll be very thankful for the voters who allow me to do that.
So, well, at the time, actually, in 2010, you, along with, I think, a colleague in Saugus, perhaps, the first Asian Americans elected to the State House.
Yeah, Donald Wong from Saugus. People may know him as the Wong family that owns the Kowloon restaurant.
Oh.
Much later on, we discovered Paul Schmid from Westport. He's from Westport. He's actually 1/4 Chinese. So I think we discovered later we're all elected together. It was an interesting phenomenon that year because people had worked into the presumption that Asian Americans have been elected to the House of Representatives before. It became a media trying to find historical record via the clerk's office to find out if any Asians been elected. But there was always like this weird presumption that, oh yeah, we've had them. It's like, but he couldn't remember who they are. So history in the making was not on my mind. Just getting through the election was the priority. But I was obviously aware. I mean, you guys all know I have a lot of institutional knowledge of the State House and Quincy politics at this stage, and I never thought that much about it. I just need to get out of an election first. So.
Sure. Well, seeing was talking about it, November 8th, state election, many different voting options available to folks now, right?
No, absolutely. As of this time, you still got early voting going on. That'll end this weekend. You have mail-in voting that's ending this week in terms of ability to do mail-in votes. Absentee ballots, I believe it's passed, and voter registration's 10 days prior to the election now, so 10 calendar days. So that's also now passed. But the opportunity to vote has never been more available to people. And because of my mom's health conditions, it's very unclear about me in election day. We found it a hard way on primary day when she had an episode, and we had to try to get to vote that day. And it was actually very challenging for her that day to get to vote. So, we took the opportunity to do mail-in ballots because of uncertainty of what may be going on election day in the family. And this is the changing world we live in. And we have so many different ways to do this especially because of COVID. There is no real excuse to vote in my mind. It's available and it's there. And in mail-in votes in particular, you can actually track it online to ensure when it was mailed to you and when they received it, and whether or not the clerk has process is accepted. You can check online for that stuff if you're concerned about where your ballot is. And even then, if you get a mail-in ballot and you decide you want to show up to polls but didn't send a mail ballot in, you can still vote in person. the system, is in place to prevent double voting. So, the rows all checked off. So, I mean, I don't know what to tell people anymore. It's like, I used to say it's a 13-hour day on Tuesday, it's a big gap in time. Try to do your best to get there. Now it's like you got basically 4 weeks of the ability to get registered, your ballot in, and if you're afraid of mail-in ballot, you can go in person early. I mean, it's just so many opportunities. My nephew's voting for the first time in Commonwealth, Virginia. He's in college his first year, and he got his mail-in ballot. He was actually concerned because it didn't get to him yet, but eventually got there.
Yeah, and just interestingly, mail-in ballots must be postmarked by November 8th, but they'll be accepted up until Saturday, November 12th for the state election, at least.
It's treated the same as absentee ballots.
Okay.
They're following the same rule. People don't realize your absentee ballots have to be postmarked properly and received, and particularly people overseas, the military, those two groups. Those absentee ballots are given a little bit more time to get back to the clerk's office and counted. But to be honest with you, most people are going to get their ballots in, on election day, because that's the message has been given for 2 solid years of 2020, 21. Ballots must be in the clerk's office on election day by mail-in. I do expect that people are going to be like drilled in their head for 2 years of doing that. So I would suspect not that many will be post-election day. And I doubtful that in Massachusetts in particular, I just don't see the few extra days of ballots making a huge difference in some of these races around the state. I think there's some close races like Ludlow state rep race is going to be fairly close. So they probably won't make it official after absentee ballot deadline has gone through on receipt. There might be a close race in the North, the Becca Roush, Sean Dooley race out in, I can't remember the name of the Senate district. It's like Norfolk and Bristol now. I can't remember the name of these districts that's west of us. But that might be a close state Senate race. But yeah, right now that it's, from the legislature standpoint, I'm not seeing a lot of what I call nail biting situations.
Yeah, and remind folks too, there is a drop box located right outside Quincy City Hall, so you can drop your ballot right in that box up until 8 o'clock on election night.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about the drop box. Yeah, you can actually get up there and drop your mail-in ballot if you're concerned about using the post service, or it's election day and you got to get to work at a early hour or whatever. You can pass by City Hall and do the drop and run in the middle of the night if you have to. And unlike some other states, I'm pretty confident people are respectful of getting to a drop box. I've not heard of any incidences thus far of intimidation or the potential threat of people feeling like they've been how to put this surveyed by certain other folks believing that you're and I mean you, literally you and me, are doing something improper. So thankfully we live in Massachusetts.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about the bombshell that was dropped yesterday, Tacky, from the MBTA's general manager. Looks like one of the first responsibilities of the new administration is to pick a new GM for the T.
Well, yeah, the GM is actually picked by the board of directors of the MBTA. So it's kind of yes, kind of no. I mean, the new governor will have appointments to the board, but the governor's opinion does carry weight regarding who the new general manager is. It's a surprising no. I mean, it's been 8 years since the last administration has changed over. And quite frankly, as I say over and over again, no one wants to be the one to turn the lights out on the way out the door. And, the Poltak, Steve Poltak has done 4 years there, actually had to work through a pretty challenging time during COVID, where pretty much he had no money coming in from ridership. And then he also came into a situation, there was huge infrastructure problems. And I believe he's like the 4th MBTA general manager in 8 years. So the fact he lasted just under near 4 years is quite remarkable for a job, but you can barely keep anybody 18 months. So the endurance test of this guy to actually last this long is probably going to be a record for MBTA general managers. in the last 20 years. But I think, you all saw in the news, the shortcomings too. But I wish I could say it was just this guy. It's more than just him. I think it's the lack of consistent leadership, top heavy management, the desire to downsize their budget via people reduction. And, I truly believe on a personal level, they were trying to fill in a lot of positions via independent contractors as part of construction projects, as opposed to actually hiring more full-time personnel. I mean, Quincy's a very politically savvy city, and you have any clue how many calls I get about, hey, I want a job at the T, I want a job at the T. I mean, it's like a mantra. To be perfectly honest, in the last decade, last 6 years, I've gotten no requests for a job at the T. And one of the reasons it's very hard to get a job at the T is because there were no vacancies at the T. People didn't want to leave, even though they have that funky 20-year rule regarding 20 years and you get your max pension. It's like a funky math to get there. But I mean, even then, people don't just jump off, the T right away when they're pension eligible either. They do kind of hang out for a while longer. So the fact they have, 800 jobs remaining to fill is shocking to me, who's working government my whole life, and that's all I need. Can you give me a job at the T? No, there's no vacancies. Unknowns to the rest of us. Now they got vacancies galore, but they have insufficient training capacity to get people onto the job quickly. And again, this is a management issue, and we've been saying this over and over again for years. It's not the workers entirely. It's a management issue, and now it's fully come to light. This is a management problem. And Steve Potak, I'll give him a lot of credit. Getting capital projects going, he made sure that the Wallaston T station reconstruction was actually very smooth. The bus transportation they provided on the schedule worked out very well. The rehabs of the Quincy garages went very smoothly. Admittedly, the old Lowe's site is having some issues regarding finding a bid price that isn't $400 million. And it is it needs to be a future ready site. It's not just, putting a, $80 million, standard diesel station. It needs to be future ready for electric and hybrid and perhaps hydrogen buses of the future, which is why the price tag is so large. It's a future ready location, but it's very expensive. And we saw the fires in the T, the derailment on the red line. There's been no talk about accountability of the Chinese car manufacturing site that's out in Springfield, because they've been providing these vehicles. There's been a lot of challenges as well. So, and he's done some good stuff. I agree. I mean, regarding things like capital projects, getting on top of emergencies, really taking advantage of COVID to get a lot of stuff done, particularly, government center was completely done properly, under his term during the COVID crisis. And then trying to navigate, like I said, basically a year and a half, and still now reduce ridership revenue. A lot of challenge. But on the flip side, he continued to perpetuate a management problem, being top heavy, insufficient workers. And again, it's like Republicans like to do in state government, try to make things privatized. And well, here you go, guys. This is what MBTA looks like, because they have been privatizing it via using capital projects to fill the jobs with temporary workers.
It seems like one solution might be they need an MBTA school. They need an actual school for the T to foster their new workforce.
Well, a T workforce culture is a legit issue. Historically, until we got to Mitt Romney, we're talking way back machine now. The MBTA general managers actually come out of the T workforce itself. And I've met a few in my days when I worked in the Senate, because obviously the T is very important to us. And, there was a pretty consistent line, but they, starting Mitt Romney, moving to Patrick, and now Governor Baker, they've been always hiring people that actually literally no idea how the T works. And most of them actually have a minimal transportation experience. There was some exceptions, like my high school friend, Rich Davies, was a T general manager for, I think, a year and a half. He was a commuter rail manager for a few years, and he became Secretary of Transportation. Now he's been bouncing around the country, running around, or actually fixing up other public transits. And doing damage control, get up, running, and moving on again. So there are some folks, but one reason or another, they couldn't keep them, mostly because good talent, is high price, right? I mean, what you pay for folks. So, but they, I'm not. We'll see if there's another general manager comes out of the T system. I want to tell you, the answer is going to be no. There's just so few employees and so few talent, and this is where also the pension system gets kind of funky, because I said earlier this weird 20-year rule. Well, the general manager is actually subject to the MBTA pension program.
Oh.
So, yeah, you get your high 3 there, and then you cash out in 3 years. Again, you don't have that like 9-year general manager for an agency like this, which is basically a giant corporation, that you need to have consistent leadership and monitoring over projects. Like during the big administration, they did point out to us that a lot of projects kept being restarted because every time a new general manager came in, they have to learn the whole thing all over again. They have to start off from scratch. They have no idea what's going on. So suspend capital projects. Well, they're kind of learning the ropes, and by the time they figure it out, they're gone, and they start the process over again. So Government Center is the example of that. That project's been rotating GMs for like 25, 30 years, because every time a new GM comes in, they don't know what it is, have to start over. So I give, Paul Tech a lot of credit. I mean, he did not sit on his hands on these projects sitting on the desk at the T and just, took them off the shelf, and just did it. Because these plans have been there for a long time. Someone just had to have the willpower to execute.
Yeah, I mean, some might say that the pandemic helped that because of all the federal money that came in during that time.
Absolutely. And the MBTA bonds separately from the state, and people kind of don't understand that as well. I was still around when we did forward funding, where the T is now on a fixed budget based on the sales tax, which a lot of question that worked out. But right now in hyperinflation, it's working out just fine in terms of revenue. But when we're not in hyperinflation, it doesn't quite work as well because it's tied to the sales tax in the state. But I mean, it used to just bill the state for 18 months of taxpayer money, and there you go. Here's the bill with no accountability, and the state used to carry all their debt. So when we forward funded them, we forced them to actually have to carry their own debt and actually manage their own capital projects, as opposed to having the legislature earmark their projects for them, which is actually better when you think about it. You don't want the legislature earmarking MBTA projects. It's not good management. So it's actually better let the safety and the riders come first, and let the T decide where the safety is, as opposed to the legislature telling you got to spend money in certain places. And that is much smarter way of doing it, taking out of our control. So this was back in like 99. I mean, we're talking about like ancient history too, these days regarding the T, because people forgot what the T billing system was like prior to 2000. And actually, it was Joe Sullivan, the former mayor of Braintree, former rep who was the chair of transportation, was one of the people that put this project together. He knows very well how to do this. And I think Senator Haverin from Haverhill, I think it was from Haverhill. I get my locations mixed up. He was Methuen. Where's the Methuen? Yeah, he's gonna tell. I can't remember where things are anymore. But yeah,
well, anything over the Tobin Bridge is foreign to us down here in Quincy. So,
well, even my memory's wearing thin, right? But Bob Haverin was the senator who put this together too. So, I was around trying to learn this stuff way back in the Wayback Machine. But yeah, I mean, that's how it was done, and this is how the T's funded. It's 1 penny of sales tax, so 6.25%, 1% of it goes to the T, and as part of the fixed budget. And we've done some one-time appropriations to try to taper fare increases. But globally speaking, this is one of the lowest fare systems because it's a flat system. It's not distance-based travel. Us in New York, the further you go, the more you pay. We're a flat system. So the further you go, cost-wise, you're the cheapest one on the planet, but you do by distance. So people kind of forget that sometimes. You have to put this in some context.
Yeah. Speaking of taxes, refund checks are going out this week, Techie.
Yep, the governor is deciding that he wants to give you all a Black Friday Election Day gift. I don't know how to put it. Normally what happens with tax credits is actually when you go to pay your taxes next year, the credit is applied to your tax due, and then you get a refund. or you get a reduction in your tax burden in the 2022 taxes. But the governor changed the rules of the Department of Revenue, the regulations, that they can now give it back as a direct rebate or refund to all you. And actually, me too. I get a little bit of money because, I'm not part of the top 1% that's going to make it like a bandit in this proposal, where it's total taxes paid. It's what you have, your tax burdens percentage. So they're looking at almost 14% now, according to the last State House News article. Near 14% of the tax burden from 2021 is going to come back in a check or direct deposit, probably in the next 7-ish or so days.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Watch your mailbox, folks, or watch your direct deposit accounts.
Absolutely. And people really do going to need that money in the near term. We also saw that energy prices have been fixed. Basic rate for electric has been set at the worst possible time. Inflation still continues. The Fed's going to hike interest rates shortly. So, keep looking for those CDs and short-term bonds if you have, a little bit of money, want to get some interest on it. And I say this and say it again, I fully expect consumer spending to really come down starting in November, starting right now. People are going to travel in November. Prices are rapidly rising for ticket prices for the Thanksgiving week. But I don't see a lot of movement in Christmas period. I do think people are going to use their money to see folks as opposed to spend a lot of money on folks, I think is where to put it.
Yeah. Any discussion at all on the economic recovery bill?
Yeah, the supplemental budget / economic development bill, it's an active conversation. As I said back in August, the conversation is hardly over. But obviously, you get $3 billion is coming back to taxpayers, this week. So that changes our surplus number significantly, as we talked in the past. I do expect a mini econ debt bill in some form, and it still be very substantial, but I don't expect to see earmarks. I don't expect to see major policy changes. Don't expect to see a lot of non-essential projects, so to speak. I mean, I fully expect that the hospital assistance money will be there that are COVID impacted. I fully expect to see some kind of LIHEAP fund, people with low income heating assistance program. I do expect money for the RAFT program, which is a program on people in transitional housing, which is going to be a very tough winter for that. You're probably going to see some stuff with substance abuse and homelessness. I wouldn't be surprised to see some extra money in a place like Mass and Cass to help Mayor Wu out in Boston. We're talking about a lot of money. I mean, the hospitals alone are $300 million minimum. But I mean, it's still small compared to the almost, close to almost $3 billion in tax cuts, plus special projects, plus bonds, plus a whole lot of stuff we're trying to get done last July. And what's going to also happen is we're going to have a little extra buffer in place in surplus that we're going to let, be there and if there is a shortfall in revenue. Because if Christmas and Black Friday turn out to be very poor sales tax months, we're going to have to backfill that with something. What remaining little surplus we have at that point, we're mostly going to hold aside a little bit of that to make sure that we can make sure we pay our bills come January if there is a shortfall.
Yeah, and I read recently that lottery revenues are down as well.
And lottery is a little bit of a funky thing. I mean, the lottery revenues obviously took a massive hit in COVID. I mean, Keno in particular is 10% of the lottery, so no restaurants, no Keno. But, as soon as there was like a reopening, we had record numbers in 2021 of lottery sales. And actually, lottery sales up to the end of the fiscal year in 2022, into July 31st. July 1st, end of fiscal year, June 30th, July 1st, was actually ahead of projections. Going into projections now, it's slowed down. However, it's still very on for the lottery. And you can't blame sports betting. That's not online yet until next year. And one of the reasons the lottery, got a huge pickup was, $1 billion Powerball.
That's tonight, actually. Yes. So if we don't talk next week, Taki, it's because I'm in Fiji.
Well, if you win this thing, I might be joining you. Not like I'm encouraging people to gamble, but this podcast does not drop before midnight what was it? Drawings at 10 p.m. before 10 p.m.
10
tonight.
p.m. I think. Yeah.
Get your Powerball ticket. But yeah, 1.2 and growing Powerball. It creates a huge spike in participation. The state gets a piece of the action as part of the multi-state lottery participation, and that's one of the reasons why when we started coming out of like pseudo lockdown, whatever you want to call it, in the fall of 2020. Remember there was a massive both Powerball and what was it, Mega Millions? I can't
I
forget.
think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell I don't play enough lottery. I just oversee the lottery. That huge nationally had a huge impact on all lotteries with those huge mega prizes. And people, for some reason, don't feel it's worth it until you get to like the $500 million mark. Oh yeah, I'll buy it. Right.
Which is kind of ironic because it just increases the odds exponentially.
It is, isn't it? The bigger the jackpot, the harder it is to win it.
Yeah.
Remember the days when you had like mega bucks, $1 million, people went bonkers for and was buying.
Oh yeah, that was big time. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big time as a kid. Oh, $1 million. I mean, everyone's buying tickets now, make Frontline News and all this stuff. Now it's like, well, it's $1 billion becomes newsworthy. Talk about how life has changed, right? So I mean, the lottery will see a recovery there. The lottery will, see keener recovery at some level as we move towards the winter months. People are going to be, I do believe people are going to be dining out less, but people will be, still, active in the winter. But I don't think it'll be nearly as active of a COVID peak, and God knows what else is trying to come at us this winter. It seems like every time I turn around, there's another disease floating around. But yeah, it's. They'll be fine. I just don't see this revenue dip, not making projection, going to be a permanent problem. I just don't see that.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit before we run out of time about? I wanted to mention the migrant situation down at the Kingston Plymouth area, and the Department of Housing Community Development kind of taking it on the chin, I guess, for not notifying the communities that these folks were coming.
Well, you mean the state not courting of anybody before they do it?
Yeah, that would be it.
Yeah. Is
that an unfunded state mandate? Is that what that is?
I think it's more like, hey, surprise. It's interesting how government operates, right? I mean, the city of Boston and Mayor Janey started moving homeless folks, into Saugus hotels without telling anybody. The state, also, moves migrants, but also we've done this with the homeless before migrants. People forget that. In the late 90s into the early 2010s for close to 15, 20 years, we were putting people in hotel rooms that are homeless or transitional housing situation, particularly if they have families, and we didn't tell the communities they were coming.
Right.
So, this is not unusual. It's not new. It just happens to be, migrants now as opposed to local homeless. Seeking a place to live. Either way, it's not good because you didn't inform the community what's going on to ensure the community is prepared to do whatever service they need to do. It isn't like people don't want to help. That is not the message. The message is we can't help you if we're not ready for you to help you. And it's not like other places around the country. It's like, get out, you all don't belong here and stuff like that. No, local government, wants to be helpful here in Massachusetts. People are good that way. You just got to be prepared for them to come. Is what the message is.
Yeah, it's like dinner guests that arrive unannounced.
Well, exactly it. But want to flip for sake of counter argument, since we can do counter arguments in this format. If you don't want them there, you can start staging a government, indicating your protest or the move to move them in there, saying that, hey, I know you need to move, 50 homeless people to my district, but we can't handle it. We don't want them. Don't send them. So in the flip side argument, the state, gets them there really fast, so it prevents the local community from raising a protest. That they unprepared to do it, and we don't have time, so we shouldn't do this at all. So I mean that's a counter argument on that front, for the sake of presenting two sides. How people are behaving towards people moving into an area, even temporarily, regarding these protests by white supremacist groups, is extremely troubling.
Yeah, I guess the argument could also be we didn't want to tip those groups off ahead of time.
Yeah, this has been quite empowered, really after since the January 6th riot, insurrection, rebellion, whatever you all want to call it. The violent day on Capitol Hill on January 6th. It feels like they've been even more emboldened to get out there. There's been a swastika situation, I believe, in Stoneham. I know for a fact, in Quincy at the Crusher, there was swastikas out there. Obviously, but this was pre-COVID. I mean, Beechwood Knoll had a swastika situation, but this was pre-COVID. It's been going around quite a bit. There's been, I've heard from Senator Keenan and his other towns he represent, there's been other anti-Semitic issues going on there. So it's real, folks. It's in Massachusetts. The Anti-Defamation League does track these things, and there's a huge spike in this stuff in 2021, and there's no reason not to believe it's continuing in 2022. What's concerning is whether or not the feds are able to keep track of these guys. They're very good at monitoring these days and informing local police of what's going on. So, the cooperation between federal government and local law enforcement is crucial, because you just don't know if this rises next level. I don't know what could happen, and you don't need situations where people could be attacked, but more importantly, these groups create fear, and when people are afraid, bad things happen.
Yeah, very true. So you want to get ahead of it, certainly, not let it fester.
Well, you got to say something. I mean, we always talk about see something, say something, until Nazis show up. And it's a very, unless they're wearing like white hoods and, bring like torches into your home. I mean, people seem to have this bizarre notion that if we ignore them, they go away. But let me provide you from a different point of view, particularly as, dealing with Asian hate and Asian racism. You ignore it, it just perpetuates. And this is kind of the interesting with the racism of being ignored and racism of silence. Because in Asian communities, we're subject to the same level of racism as everybody else. But, people don't acknowledge our existence when it happens. So you ignore it, saying, "Oh, it's a one-off; it goes away," but it perpetuates itself until you get to a situation like we've had in the last several years of COVID and looking for a scapegoat. So again, not a new phenomenon. If you look at history, it's happened a lot in U.S. history. But you ignore it long enough, things will happen. And even after violence happened, people still ignored it. So you got to keep it out in front of the light, in the sense that it's there, it's wrong, and it's coming. But if you argument is that, well, we don't give them more attention it needs. Well, you ever heard of the concept of silence is consent, which is completely false? Silence is not consent. But it's a very interesting human behavior where if someone doesn't say anything, you presume there's consent. It's a human thing. And it's completely fictional in the sense that it's not right. You don't say anything doesn't mean you agree. You've seen, trust me, everybody's done this. And now you say nothing and you allow white supremacist groups to roam around your neighborhoods. You don't actually have to name them. You don't actually have to talk about them. You have to acknowledge they exist and to have some vigilance on it. That's all you got to do. And remind folks, that these elements of hatred isn't welcome in our communities, by actually noting that they've arrived, and people shouldn't be encouraging this behavior.
Well, I think it's hard to be the first one, to step up and say something. But I think once that does happen, there's strength in numbers, and folks would be surprised at how many other people would back them and support them. But nobody wants to be first.
Well, that's correct. I take it from a guy who's been out front more than once in his life. Someone's got to go out there and say, hey, this is a problem. And willing to, nowadays social media, willing to take a couple of shots from, people behind a keyboard, feeling the need to just tear people down. And whether or not I'm willing to do that, as you all know, I don't like social media. I pay very little attention to what's on there. So go ahead and type what you like, because it's just like, okay, you can go do it. But to say it doesn't exist, to say that we have to ignore it, isn't right, because would you like this happening to you? And if it happened to you, do you say something? And we can talk about this with people in situations of domestic violence, people with developmental disabilities. It's not uniquely just about skin color.
That's right. Absolutely true. Yep. We are running short on time today, unfortunately, Tacky, but there's a lot going on in the world we can touch on next week, if that's okay.
Sure. We got next week and do a recap of the election and talk about a bunch of other elections that's been happening globally.
That's right. But in the meantime, how do folks get a hold of you?
Well, you can reach me at 617-722-2370, 617-722-2370. Hit a button. Staff will get your voicemail, because that's the world we live in these days. And, we'll get back to you as quick as you can. tackey.chan@mahouse.gov, tackey.chan@mahouse.gov is my email. Thankfully, I'm in a little bit of slower season, so I will find your email. Again, we prioritize emails that are constituent services first. I am still getting policy emails, but it's not like it was back during the summer. You guys know my Facebooks, Stereotypes Tacky Chan Facebook. I visited Simmons College. They want to see the pictures of a tour there regarding modern nursing education. It's actually pretty fascinating. Most recent visit, as well as my at Tacky Chan Twitter at Tacky Chan. And obviously, you got the state website, malegislature.gov, as well as tackychan.org. It's websites that provide some resources. Of course, here with you at QA TV, I'll be talking to you a little bit on election night, but obviously, you can see the Tacky and Joe, informational session. I have no idea what to call this anymore. We actually never named this properly other than Tacky Talk.
No, I just kind of, picked that one day. I like the alliteration more than anything.
So, if you like this, follow Joe's podcasts and obviously YouTube and on QA TV. So, like early voting, there's no shortage of ways to get Joe in your life.
And I'm sure that's what everybody is trying to do. More likely QA TV. And by the way, we'll have a live election night coverage beginning at 8 p.m. on November 8th. So, and thank you for being part of that. We look forward to talking to you then, and we'll check in with a Tacky Talk next week.
Sounds great. I'll talk to you in a week's time.